You probably know the way that VA rates conditions is based on CMP examinations. So CMP examinations are done for any kind of condition that you claim. There is what's called a disability benefits questionnaire, or DBQ. And it's a form that's different for every condition. There's one for just about everything under the sun, and the doctor will review your records beforehand. Oftentimes they just say they've reviewed them, but they're supposed to review your entire VA records. They are also supposed to conduct a thorough interview with you, going over each item on the DBQ that's applicable. It doesn't always happen. I hear a lot of times these are rushed, but ideally the doctor is going to take the time to go over all the questions on the form with you. And based on your answers or the doctor's answers to those questions, your rating is issued. And the important thing to know for CMP exams is those questionnaires for every condition that I just mentioned, those are actually available on the VA's website. When one of my clients has an upcoming CMP exam, we always recommend that they review the particular questionnaire form for the CMP exam that they're going to, just so you can be prepared for the type of questions that the doctor might ask. Because if it's on the form, the doctor is supposed to ask it. So that'll usually give someone going in a better idea what they're expected to talk about, kind of helps you feel better prepared going in. I also always tell veterans, when you go into a CMP exam, be honest. Just like, yeah, obviously, we're always supposed to be honest. But it's very common to just be polite and say, when asked, how are you? Well, thank you. How are you? No, I'm doing okay. That's just politeness. It's standard when you're meeting someone you don't really know, you just say you're fine. Except this is not a social outing or just like a happenstance meeting. This is an examination to gauge the level of your disability. It starts as soon as you enter the room. So you shouldn't just kind of give the polite small talk answers. You need to really think about how your disability affects you and think about the worst days as well as the best days. You might be having an okay day symptom-wise when you go in for the CMP exam, but if you have flare-ups or you have recurring issues on, say, a weekly, monthly basis, you need to talk about those too, because it's important for the examiner to know the full scope of your disability. So not just how are you doing today, how are you doing in average, like how on an average month. You might be doing fine. You might have 10 days where you're fine, or you might have 10 with severe pain, and you might have 10 where you can't get out of bed. Another piece of advice is bring a friend or family member to the exam if you can. I think it depends from examiner to examiner. Sometimes they won't let other people in the room. Sometimes they're fine with it. It's always good to have another pair of eyes and ears, because unfortunately, I do hear that sometimes, I don't want to say most of the time, but I'll say a lot of times, the examinations are not done to the right standards. I've heard veterans talk about being rushed, where an examiner went over what should be like a 6-page questionnaire in about 5 minutes. I've heard them say, they're not really treated with respect. Maybe you show up to the appointment, the doctor's 30 minutes late and then gives you an attitude, for example. If you're rushed, condescended to, not actually listened to your answers, the doctor's not actually writing down what you're saying, or you're otherwise not treated with respect during a CMP exam, you should call the VA at their main number and let them know your experience. Now, this will not change the content of the CMP exam, but it's really important to document, because the VA receives these forms and they just treat them as absolute truth, unless there's something in the record that shows, well, maybe we shouldn't treat this examination as truth, because there's note for the veteran called in and said the examiner was an hour late and then spent 5 minutes on the exam with them. Usually that's going to be for your attorney or representative to point out to the VA. They're not going to go look and see, how can we disprove this exam? That's kind of up to us, but it is important to have that information on file to combat the VA's feeling that if it's on a CMP exam, it is the word of God. It is the truth. It's not always the truth.